in, so we're going to go ahead and get started. There are some instructions here just informing you that you can participate by either using your computer speakers and microphone or by calling in using your telephone. I will keep everyone muted during the presentation, but if you have any questions while I'm presenting, you can just type them into the chat panel or the questions panel, and Becca will pick up any questions that you have. At the end of the presentation, I'll ask that you use the raise hand button. So there's a button that you can click on to raise your hand, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end, and I can unmute anyone that wants to speak up. Since we have so many people today, it'd be a little difficult for me to unmute everyone at once. It's just going to be a lot of background noise and pretty difficult for people to hear. So we're going to have to do it a little bit more segmented than that. So that's the format of the webinar. My name is Derek Bovey. I work here in our marketing and sales department as a product specialist, and today we're going to be kind of giving you an in-depth look at the ZoomText Camera, what you're going to get in the package, what the two different stand options are, and how you can set them up, along with going through some settings within ZoomText on how to use the feature. So this is an outline of what we're going to cover. First thing I'll show you is effectively what you're going to get in the box. The two different stand combinations. There's one that's a weighted base plate and the other one that's just a C-clamp that attaches to the edge of your desk. Then we'll go through kind of some general setup of the camera, including how to orient it above the printed material, how far away you want to have it set up. And then we'll jump into the software side of things with ZoomText and show you how you can do things like adjust your magnification level, change the color filtering, and switch between the full and docked modes. And then we'll end with some of the more advanced settings. There's a clarity control within the software that lets you adjust the brightness and contrast of the camera, which can be very, very helpful in situations with poor lighting or sometimes with direct overhead lighting. That can be an issue as well. And then we'll go into some other things such as changing the resolution and the frames per second of the camera. So if you have a high-end machine, you can increase the frame per second and get some better looking performance, smoother video quality on screen. Lower-end machines are really going to struggle with that, so just a caution there. You want to have a pretty current machine in order to do that. And then we'll go over some of the hotkeys as well. So that being said, we'll jump right into the demo. And I'm actually going to be using ZoomText and the camera feature to do the demonstration. So first thing I'm going to do here is go to the Tools tab and launch our camera in full screen view so it's taking up the entire screen.
Camera full.
So right now I've just got a table set up in front of the camera, and I'm going to show you what you're going to get in the actual package. So first thing you're going to get is this long, flexible arm on the camera. The Logitech camera itself is attached on one end of it. Okay, so this is all pre-assembled. You've got the camera arm with this plastic wire sleeve that fits over it. The ball head attachment on top, which is then attached to the camera itself. So this is one of the pieces that you're going to get in the box. And then along with that, depending on which camera stand you've purchased, you'll either have the weighted base plate or the C-clamp. Okay? And now you'll notice that both of these have an attachment on the end of them where the camera itself or the stand fits into that. So I'm going to show you how that works. I'll actually do it with the weighted base plate. So first thing you're going to want to do is at the far end of the camera stand, you're going to see that there's this metal receptacle here, and you're just going to put that right into the camera stand itself. Okay, so that's just going to snap right in there. You'll have your USB cord at the end of that, which will then you plug into your computer. Let me move this back a little bit. So then what you would want to do is bend the arm, okay, until I can get the camera into view here. Now, the camera itself is kind of collapsed in here. So what you're going to want to do is pull the wire a little bit just to get a little bit more extra length here. And you're going to You're going to pull this down and out, and you're going to see that the camera is actually, let me see if I can show this to you. So you can see the eye of the camera right there. This head swivels back and forth. I generally want to have this oriented kind of like this, okay? And hopefully you can see this. You want to have the eye of the camera pointing down, okay? So this whole thing kind of collapses. There's no right or wrong way to do this really, but I'm just going to kind of show you how I do it. So you can see the eye of the camera here. I'm going to have it wanting to be face down because we're going to have printed material underneath the camera. So I'm just going to bend this a little bit more so you can kind of see how this would be set up. Okay. And again, this arm, it's 24 inches. It's flexible. I mean, I can put it in any sort of orientation that I want. You know, you can kind of even roll it up if you wanted to take it with you. So I'll just set this up in place here and just kind of give you an idea of how you would set this up or what it would look like. So let's say I had something like a newspaper that I wanted to read. Okay, you're obviously going to put that underneath the camera so that you could move the printed material underneath the eye of the camera. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind, you don't want to have the camera way, way, way high up. Okay, it's out of frame here now, but if I had it way up here, the text isn't going to appear very large on screen. Yes, you can magnify with the ZoomText Camera feature in ZoomText, but the amount of magnification to see this text here large is going to be very high, which means that the text quality is going to appear very jagged on screen since we're just magnifying digitally with the camera. So what you want to do is have the camera positioned about 4 to 6 inches away from your printed material, no more than that. So you're going to have a very small field of view as to what you're looking at, but all you'll need to do is move the printed material underneath the camera, and it'll work much like a traditional CCTV. A lot of desktop CCTVs, they have a camera mounted up top. You put your printed material underneath it, and then you have an XY table that you can drag along to move the printed material. The way that you use it is exactly the same as that. You want to mount the camera directly above what you're trying to read, and again, no more than 4 to 6 inches. You can even go a little bit closer if you wanted to. You have to be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away. That's the minimum focal length of the camera. It is an autofocus camera as well. The other nice thing about this camera package, if you have this on your desk, the arm actually swivels so I can move it out of the way. Okay, if I wanted to read something, I can swivel this back into view and out of view. If I want to use the camera for video conferencing, you can just flip this up and have it facing you and use it that way as well. The ball head attachment, there's a little bit of movement that you can have here if you want to pivot the head of the camera depending on what you're trying to look at. Like maybe you were holding a pill bottle or something and you wanted to just tilt it so you could do that. The ball head will help there as well. Basically everything comes pre-assembled. The only thing you need to do is attach the camera to the stand, either the weighted base plate or the C-clamp, and then, like I said, the camera itself is kind of collapsed. Okay, this whole thing folds up here like this. Okay, so you have to kind of unravel it, and then you can even twist the camera head around if you want to. But again, main idea is have the eye of the camera pointing directly down at the information that you're looking at. So those are some good setup guidelines. I'll just show you real quick how the C-clamp works, just so you can get an idea of that. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this. Okay, take this out of here. So here's the C-clamp, all right? And again, the camera is going to attach right there, and it has this right here where you can tighten this or loosen it depending on what you're attaching it to. So for the most part, most surfaces you're going to be able to attach this to. You might need to screw it in more or less depending on what you're attaching it to. In this case, I have to tighten quite a bit. Okay, so now that's on there. And now we can attach this end of the camera into it. Right. And again, we're probably at the wrong angle here, so I'll turn the table around. But just so you can get an idea. So I've got the clamp attached over here at the far end of the desk, and then I can orient my camera down where I have my printed information. Okay, so those are some of the guidelines as to how you should set it up, what to expect, and what you get in the box. Now we're going to go through showing you how you can use ZoomText to view this information. So I'm going to go ahead and swing some things around here and use the camera that we're looking at to view the printed information. Okay, so there we go. I'm just going to move this into place a little bit better here. Okay. Okay, so, all right. Let's exit out of here because I'm going to go back into a different mode. If you recall at the beginning, I was in the full screen mode so that you saw the camera and everything that was on the table there. Now I'm going to go into the docked view, which is kind of a split screen view.
Camera.
And in here, you'll notice that the top half of our screen is looking at our camera view, and the bottom half is our Windows desktop with ZoomText. And we also have this camera toolbar that allows us to manipulate the camera itself. So the first part of the setup is, very mechanical. We're setting up and orienting the camera. Now this part is where we're using ZoomText and doing some things in software to look at the actual camera image. So first thing you can do is very simply magnify the image, enlarge it by clicking on the Zoom Plus button. Okay, and you'll see that as I do that, it's increasing the size of the image. Now, where we have this set up in part of our conference room here, there's not any really good overhead lighting. So this is going to appear really dark on screen right now. But we will go through some of the settings here that you can use to enhance the quality of the image. Now, if I need a lot of magnification, okay, after a while this text is going to become pretty jagged. So remember earlier when I said you don't want to have the camera 1.5 feet away, this is why. If I had the camera very far away and had to zoom in a lot, that text is going to become unreadable at some point. So one thing to keep in mind is, again, position the camera as close as you can for your magnification needs, and then rely on the zooming feature, maybe no more than 5 levels of increasing the magnification, because otherwise the image quality is going to start to get degraded from there. A few other things you can do. If I put this paper in underneath my camera and it's upside down, oh great, well, how do I fix this? Well, obviously I can just turn the newspaper upside down, but there is a rotate button that allows you to flip the image 90 degrees with each click. So if you had it set up, in a certain environment where, the page or whatever you're trying to read is off the edge of your desk and you had to orient it upside down for whatever reason, you can use that rotate control to accommodate that as well. So that's kind of in an extreme situation, I guess I'd say, but for the most part, you're probably going to be able to just turn the printed material over. Now, you might notice here right now the camera looks like it's actually out of focus. These are, like I said, autofocus cameras. However, sometimes the Logitech cameras have trouble detecting changes and are actually not in focus. So we've provided a focus control here that lets you manually adjust the focal length of the camera. Okay, so in here, if you click on the focus button, check the Enable Manual Camera Focus checkbox, and then just drag the slide bar. All right, you'll see it doesn't take much for it to get completely out of focus, but there it is in focus. Whoops, right there. It was actually at about this focal length previously, so it was a little out of focus. So I'll choose that and then click OK, and now we're back in focus. Some hotkeys for you. Hold down the Control and Windows key and use the up and down arrows. That will increase your magnification level or decrease it, up to increase, down to decrease. So again, hold Control, Windows key, and use the up and down arrows. Okay. You want to rotate the image, Control Windows key R will rotate it. So basically, 90 degrees with each press of that hotkey. All right. Next thing we're going to jump into is some of the two color schemes that are underneath the color icon here. So these are going to help improve contrast and readability of the text. So if you click on this button, you'll see right now we're set to normal color. So anything like images is going to appear as if they normally would. But if we're concerned with reading text, we want to try and improve the contrast. So within the camera feature, there are 6 different high contrast color schemes. They won't affect your desktop view in ZoomText. So if I had a color filter turned on in ZoomText, for example, oops, there you go. So if I had reverse video turned on in ZoomText, none of these settings will affect what ZoomText is doing, just what the camera view looks like. So we'll go to the first one, which is black on white. And you'll notice that we've kind of eliminated all of the gray. So if I go back to normal, you'll see that there's a lot of in-between colors in between black and white. With black and white turned on, you have a much clearer image. We're going to improve this even more once I get into the clarity feature. So while it does look better, we can improve this even greater with that clarity control. So I'll just walk through some of the schemes that we have here. First one is black on white. We also have blue on white, which is blue text on a white background. And here we're starting to see some issues with not a true white background, and that's because of the poor lighting in this room. And again, I'll show you before and after once we get into the clarity control. So that's blue on white. We have white on black, yellow on black, white on blue, and then the last one is yellow on blue. You can cycle through any of these color filters by holding down the Alt and Windows key and pressing the S key. S as in Sam. So hold down Alt, Windows key, and press S, and that will cycle you through any of the color schemes there. Okay? All right, we'll leave it on white on black for now. Before we jump into the clarity controls, I just want to show you some of the other options that you have available within the ZoomText Camera feature. The dock button here, this will cycle you through different split screen modes.
Camera vertical split.
Okay, so you can have it docked or split in one of 4 different ways. The first option you saw me using was where it was at the top half of the screen. You can have it split vertically like this, which can be helpful. Let's say if you're taking notes on something in Microsoft Word, maybe you wanted to take notes on this article here. Okay, you were doing some sort of research and you wanted to be able to type, some notes about this article. So law firm seeks to, whatever. So I can be multitasking as well, looking at the printed material, and also using another application like Microsoft Word. Okay. So the different dock modes may help. You might want to have it split vertically or horizontally.
Camera horizontal split.
So you can have it at the bottom half of your screen if you'd like, or either side.
Camera vertical split.
Of the screen split vertically, left or right.
Camera horizontal split.
And then we're back to the top. So those are the 4 different docked options or split screen views that you have if you want to multitask. If you want the camera to take up your entire screen, if you're just interested in visually reading the text that your camera is looking at, then you can use the full screen mode by clicking here. And you'll be alerted once you enter this mode that the toolbar won't be available. So we list all of the hotkeys for the ZoomText Camera feature when you enter this mode. So I'll go ahead and click Continue.
Camera full.
So in here, the camera view is taking up my entire screen, so I can just concentrate on trying to read this article in the newspaper without, seeing my desktop or seeing Windows show up there. Okay. Now, if you want to cycle back to the docked view, you can use a hotkey, which is Control Windows Spacebar.
Camera.
That will cycle you between full and docked.
Camera full.
Okay, so Control Win Spacebar.
Camera.
Now, if I don't know where the toolbar is, I can hit, I'm going to try and remember this one, I can hit Control Windows key T as in Tom, to bring up that toolbar. So again, let's say you go into the split screen view and you can't find the toolbar. It is down here on the ZoomText icon right there. But if I don't want to search for it, Control Windows key T will bring the toolbar into view. Okay? We'll go over a few other hotkeys as well once we get into the clarity control, which we'll talk about right now. And I want to go back. One of the schemes that I think looked pretty poor was blue on white. So what this clarity control does is allows us to adjust the brightness and contrast of the image. A lot of times you're not going to have perfect lighting. In our case, in this room, there's overhead lighting in the room, but not in the area where the camera is set up. So we're just getting some ambient light coming in from the window, and it's not really a perfect situation, probably not how you would want to be reading it in a normal environment. So what this clarity control will do if we click on it is allow us to change the brightness and contrast of the camera image. So I'm going to go ahead and check this box to allow me to change these slide bars. First thing I'm going to do is increase the brightness, and now you'll notice that the white background is starting to become brighter, and the blue text around the characters is starting to get a little bit thinner. So there's kind of a finite range of how far you want to increase it. Okay, I'm going to reset this. This is the default setting. Now if I go too high, you're going to notice that the text begins to wash out completely. Okay, so I don't want to do that. So I want to increase the brightness just a little bit until the blue text around the characters starts to disappear, which is right about there. Okay, so I've done that and I've improved the image already. If I uncheck this, you'll see that's what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like now. I actually want to drop this down just one more notch. Okay, so again, that's the before and that's the after. It's already looking better. Now the contrast slide bars is going to help increase the difference in contrast between that blue and white background, blue text and white background. So you'll see immediately as I drag this that the white background is going to become brighter. I'll drop it, okay, so you can see how dark it is now. And as I increase, that becomes much, much brighter. And the difference in contrast between the characters is much more apparent. And I'm going to drop this brightness down a little bit more just to make the text appear a little bit thicker on screen. So here's the before. Notice how dull that looks compared to now. Much easier to read, much clearer. And I'll zoom it in a little bit too, just to help. So again, before, after, huge improvement. So we'll go through some of the color schemes here. So there's white on black. That's what it looked like before. Not a dramatic difference there, but the background is less gray and more of a solid black color. So we're improving contrast there as well. Yellow on black, same thing. We've eliminated the gray, so you've got, this is the before, and here's the after. Bright yellow, dark black background. Okay. White on blue, minimal difference here. And some of the filters, it's not going to make a huge improvement. Others, it'll be like night and day. But here, there's better contrast and sharpness between the characters and the background color. It looks kind of dull here. If you look at the word cars, which is the third line down, watch that when I turn this on. It's much more defined, the letters of that word, now that I've improved the clarity. Okay, there's yellow on blue. And again, this one is kind of slight, but the definition of the characters is much clearer now that I've changed the clarity controls. So this is probably the most important part of this feature, is the clarity control. It might mean the difference between you being able to read the text and not being able to read it at all. So, you know, this is one thing you want to focus on, is kind of getting familiar with those controls. It's always going to be different depending on the lighting environment, but, you know, just drag, you know, kind of play with the slide bars. The contrast one isn't as susceptible to change as the brightness one is. I mean, you could drag the contrast slide bar all the way up if you wanted to. It's not going to make that big of a difference. But the brightness one is one to keep in mind, because as you can see, as I change this, it can mean, you know, unreadable text to disappearing text on screen. So, you know, it might take a little bit of playing around with to get it perfect, but as you can see, the changes here are pretty dramatic. And let's go to the last one, which is, whoops, black on white. Back to that. Okay, so that's what black on white looked like before. Again, kind of a dull gray background, and now we've got a nice crisp white background, and the text is much more defined on screen. Okay, now one area where you may not want to use these clarity controls is if you're viewing something in normal color. So if you look at the image here, okay, notice how it's very, very washed out and a lot of the details are gone. If I turn off the clarity control, you'll see that's what the picture looks like normally. So if you're looking at images, you don't want to use this clarity control because by adjusting the brightness and contrast, you're going to start eliminating details and also altering what the original colors look like. So bear in mind that when using this control, you're mainly using it to help readability of text. So use it in combination with one of the color filters. If you're looking at something like a magazine, for example, that has a lot of pictures you want to read or look at, I would keep it off. In fact, I think we do have a magazine here, and I'll just put this underneath just to kind of show you the difference. So, you know, if we had a magazine here and there's pictures with captions at the bottom. So, for example, you know, you can see this picture of the swimmer here, and if I had the clarity control enabled, now I can't even see her at all. So again, just bear that in mind. This is really going to help improve the readability of text. I mean, if you look at the text in here, let me zoom this up a little bit. You can see how easy that is to read. You know, we've got a nice white background, very crisp text. If I turn this off, you'll see that it's almost a gray background because of the printing on the paper. But one problem is, again, you're going to start washing out images and original colors if you use that control. So just something to keep in mind. You can always turn it on and off. If you want to turn that clarity control on and off, it is Alt-Windows key C, as in Charlie. So, you know, you could be using it to read your text, okay, and I'll zoom out. Now I want to see what that picture is. Just hit Alt-Windows key C, and that will bring it back to the normal brightness and contrast settings. So very important control, also important to understand when and where to use it. Use it when you're reading text. Turn it off when you're viewing something like images. Okay, and that can really help. I mean, you may be in a well-lit room, but you might have direct overhead lighting, which sometimes can cause what are called hot spots, and I'll try and fake what that would look like. So if I held my hand over the camera, well, it isn't really working, but a lot of times what happens is you can have a very harsh shadow that starts to appear, almost like what's on the left-hand side of the camera there, and you can use these brightness and contrast settings to help eliminate that. So again, regardless of the lighting situation you're in, that clarity control can be very, very helpful. Okay, few other hotkeys that we have. I showed you how to turn on and off the clarity control, but let's say you want to adjust those settings via hotkeys. If you hold down the Alt and Windows key and use the up and down arrow, that's going to increase or decrease your brightness. Okay, you can see that the slide bar is moving as I'm holding down those two modifier keys, which again are Alt and Windows key, and using up and down. Alt, Windows key left and right will adjust the contrast, decreasing it if I press the left arrow key and increasing it while pressing the right arrow key. Let's say I've really messed this up and I want to reset it. I don't know where my toolbar is. Alt, Windows key R will reset your settings. So if I'm in the full screen mode, for example,
Camera full.
And I'm zoomed in and I want to, you know, improve the clarity of this, I'll do Alt, Windows key up arrow. Let's increase the brightness a little bit. Alt, Windows key right arrow. I'm improving the contrast. Okay, that's a little bit better now. And let's say, oh, I really increased the brightness way too much. I just want to get it back to what it looked like normally. Alt, Windows key R resets you. Okay, so I'll go through some of these hotkeys again just so you can get an idea. They're all going to either have you holding down the Control Windows key or the Alt Windows key as your two primary modifier keys. So Control Windows key up and down arrow, that's going to increase and decrease your magnification level. Control Windows key left and right arrow will change the camera focal length. Okay, that one can be a little tricky because it's very, very sensitive to change. Let's see, Control Windows key spacebar.
Camera.
Cycle you through docked and full screen modes.
Camera full.
Alt Windows key S will cycle you through any of these six colors. You want to turn these off? Let's see, I got to remember what that one is. I'm going to have to remind myself. I'm looking at the list here. Okay.
Camera full.
It is, all right, so Alt Win S will cycle you through the schemes, but it won't turn them off. You want to turn off the color filter entirely. It's Alt Windows key spacebar. That will turn it on and off, okay, instead of cycling the schemes. All right. Let's see, a few others. Control Windows key R rotates your image. I think there's another one to cycle docked modes.
Camera.
Let me see what that is here. Okay, that is Control
Camera
Windows
vertical
key.
split.
Control Windows key D will cycle you through the different docked modes.
Camera horizontal split. Camera vertical split. Camera horizontal split.
Okay, if you ever want to refer back to any of these, just go to the Help menu, go to ZoomText Help, and on the left-hand side here, there's a section for hotkeys. Then open up ZoomText hotkeys. They're going to be listed in here. There will be a section for the ZoomText Camera right here. Notice it says Camera Hotkeys, and it will have all the ones that we went through here today. Okay. Another way to cheat to get to those hotkeys even easier is just click on the full icon, and then it will show you a list. Okay. All right. Now, before we talk about some of the advanced settings, I just wanted to mention something really quickly here. If I can find my mouse and get back to the presentation. I don't know where my mouse went, but just use the keyboard instead. Okay. So since you guys attended today, we're going to actually offer, I don't know where my mouse pointer went. Totally lost my mouse. There we go. We're actually going to offer a 20% off special of any camera purchase that you do by the end of the week. Okay, so you can just call our 800 number for sales and just mention camera webinar to get the deal, and they'll give you 20% off any camera purchase. So, and I forgot to mention at the beginning of the webinar, the two camera options. We have the weighted base plate and the C-clamp model. The C-clamp version is $179. That comes with the camera. It comes with the arm and the stand, or and the mount. The weighted base plate is $199. So there's a $20 difference between the two. Weighted base plate is $20 more. The C-clamp version is a little bit more portable since it's small. It weighs a little bit less, but it's also it might be more difficult to set up depending on where you're using it, how thick your surface is, the desk. Weighted base plate is much easier for most environments, but it's also a little bit heavier and a little bit more bulky to travel with. Both are very portable. I think they're 2.5 and 3.5 pounds respectively. So, I mean, you can fold this thing up, throw it in a backpack, take it with you, between home and work, or if you're traveling. So, very portable, unlike a traditional CCTV, but you probably need a hand truck to take with you.
If I could just chime in for a moment, we also have a third option where you get both options in one. And you saw Derek earlier just kind of pull that arm right out, and it fits into either stand. So a lot of people, what they do is, say at their work desk, the clamp makes more sense because it's staying put. They're not going to move it. And they just simply, at the end of the day, pull the arm out. And at home, they have on their desk or wherever they have a computer set up, they have the base plate stand. And they just simply put the arm right in it. So there's no need to buy both of them separately. So that's why we have this package with the one camera, one arm, and both mounting options, and that's $239.
Yeah, that's important to mention. Like you said, you may have, if you want to have one set up at home and one at work, perfect situation for that. All right, last thing we're going to show you guys today before we get to Q&A is some of the advanced settings for the camera here. And one of them, let me just close out this Microsoft Word application. So if you go to the Tools menu and click on Camera, or click on the camera heading here, either way, this will bring you to kind of the configuration screen for the camera. So if you have multiple devices installed, you'll see them listed here. I only have one camera set up. So that's the only one that shows up here. But you do have some other options that you can choose for the camera, one of which is your resolution of the actual image. By default, this is checked. It says automatically set resolution to fit widest view. So depending on what screen resolution your monitor is running at, we will automatically set the camera to best fit that. Now you can uncheck that and change the resolution manually. So here are the resolution options available for the camera. If you increase the resolution above what your computer monitor resolution is, it'll clip the image. You won't be able to see the entire thing that the camera's looking at. So for example, my monitor right now is running at 1280 by 720. If I change this to 1920 by 1080, I'm still only going to see 1280 by 720. It's going to clip since my monitor can't see that entire resolution. So for the most part, you're going to want to leave this control alone. Some of you that are a little bit more adventurous and want to play around with these settings, feel free to do so. The more important setting here is the frame rate setting. Now, this will improve the motion clarity of the camera. Just to show you an example, I'll drop this to 10 frames per second. Okay, and I'm just going to launch the camera here.
Camera horizontal split.
Notice as I'm moving the magazine under the camera, it's not very fast up, kind of slow. Okay, so right now this is at 10 frames per second. Our eyes in general can see, most people 30 frames per second is in general. Television, for example, usually is about 30 frames per second. Movies are 24. So that's what our eyes are used to looking at. So something like 10 frames per second is going to look really choppy. All right, so I'm going to go back here and change this to 30 and just show you the difference.
Camera horizontal split.
Remember how choppy that was before? Look how much smoother this is now. So again, changing that frames per second setting is really going to help the motion clarity as you're moving something underneath the camera.
If I could just interrupt for 1 minute.
Yep.
So just so you know, at home, sometimes or if you're at work, your internet connection could be a little bit slow. So that actually may appear choppy, even though we're telling you, look at how smooth it is. And you're thinking to yourself, what are you talking about? So that's why we record this webinar as well. So what I would advise is if that looked at all choppy to you, to just, when we send you the email with a link in it, to look at the video for even just, a small segment of it, just so you get a sense of what it will really look like if you purchase one yourself. When you're kind of doing stuff over the internet and it depends on our speed here and your speed where you are, it could make it look a bit distorted. So just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, that's a very good comment. It might be hard to tell the difference here, but just take our word for it. Increasing frames per second is going to make a world of difference. The only thing I will caution you is if you have an older machine that's older than 3 to 5 years old, this is really going to stress your machine and probably make it bog down and perform slow anyway. But if you have a higher-end machine that's more recent, it's not going to be that big of a deal. So again, you can change that frame rate setting. I would recommend that you at least run at 24 frames per second for the best motion clarity. And if you have a lower-end machine and you still want to use the camera feature, one thing you could do is actually lower the resolution. So uncheck that box and drop it to, say, 800 by 600, for example. Okay, and I'll launch the camera. Now what's going to happen
Camera
here
horizontal split.
is I'm going to have a much smaller view. Now notice still half of my screen is split here, but I'm only seeing 800 by 600 pixels of the camera. This is going to be much easier on the machine. I still can get all the benefits of the ZoomText camera feature just at a lower resolution. So my field of view, or what the camera is looking at, is a little bit smaller, but it's also much less taxing on the machine. Okay.
If you could just talk a little bit about how that's useful for handwriting. A lot of people use this feature to sign checks or to fill out a form, and maybe if you can explain what you might want to set it at if you're trying to sign something.
Yeah, so
Camera horizontal split.
again, along with these frame per second settings, so if I was looking to sign something, okay, I'm just going to write in this magazine, I don't really care here. With a slow frame per second, if I'm not looking at what I'm doing, this is almost impossible for me to even write my own name. Okay, like I can't even do it at 10 frames per second. I may not be able to do it at 30, but it was just so slow to update where my hand was a little bit behind. What I'm looking at on screen and where my hand was isn't where it is at the current time. So if I bump this up to 30, it should theoretically be easier for me to write my name. Now, if
You're out of view there.
out of frame. This isn't so easy when we have so many moving parts here and tables and chairs and desks. So here, if I write my name, you'll see it's much easier and much faster to update. So again, that's going to be helpful with the screen updating. There's still a slight delay, but it's much, much more pronounced at the lower frame rates. So I would encourage you, again, I mean, I would always at least run it at 24 or higher, unless you had a low-end machine that was really chugging when you had some of those settings changed. Just a few other things that you have available here. You can choose the default view mode when you start the feature, so you could always have it start full or one of the docked views. And if you always wanted to start rotated 180 degrees, you could have that set. Always wanted to start with a color filter, you can do that. So let's say I wanted to start docked right, rotated 180 degrees, okay, and I can launch the camera. It's going to start
Camera vertical split.
in that orientation every time, okay? So you can set your defaults or what you want your defaults to be there. And there's a couple other advanced settings here. So if you want the toolbar to be on top of any other application windows, you can check that. And then when you enter full screen mode, there's this message box that comes up that tells you about the hotkeys. You can have that show up or not show up by either checking that box,
Camera full.
or going into the settings here and checking or unchecking the option there. Okay. All right, so that's about it. I mean, that covers pretty much everything on the ZoomText camera feature. So
one other thing. So just like any of the features in ZoomText, you can change those hotkeys if you want to, and if maybe you just want to show them briefly where you go to do that.
just like any hotkey in ZoomText, you can customize this by going to the Settings menu and then going down to Hotkeys. And they're going to be listed by hotkey group here in the upper left-hand corner. This is more of a power user feature. If this is confusing to you, I would say don't worry about it and don't stress over it. But if you wanted to change the camera hotkeys, change the hotkey group to camera, and in here you'll see all of the options that you have available. Now, one thing you want to be careful of is you can create hotkey conflicts without knowing about it. So for example, if I chose Windows key, the decrease brightness, Windows key E also opens up Windows Explorer. So one thing to keep in mind is just be careful when you're modifying hotkeys because you might conflict with other applications. If you create a hotkey that's already defined in ZoomText, like let's say I wanted to use Alt-Shift-A for changing the camera clarity. That's going to tell me that the combination is already used or it's invalid. Okay. So we will tell you if there are conflicts with other ZoomText hotkeys, but it's impossible to know about other applications. But if you wanted to eliminate the use of the Windows key, for example, maybe you wanted to use app block, you could do that just by checking that and unchecking the Windows key. So you can customize that to your heart's content as well. If you ever screw it up, click on the Restore Defaults button. That'll restore everything. And just make sure if you've made changes to your hotkeys, be sure to go to your File menu and choose Save as Default to make sure that those settings are retained. Okay, so with all that being said, just a couple other last-minute things, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. Oops, I didn't want to start there. I want to start here. I have our sales and tech support hotline listed here. We offer free technical support on text. If you didn't know, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have any questions on using the camera feature, if you've got it at home and just don't have and have some questions, you can always contact our support department and they'll be able to help you out. We have weekly webinars getting started with ZoomText, and also a What's New in ZoomText 10 webinar. Those are on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We'll alternate every week now, and also have monthly webinars which are special topics. Like today we did the ZoomText Camera. Next month, what date is that? November
13th?
November 13th, we have a webinar on ZoomText troubleshooting tips. We're actually going to be joined by one of our support technicians who will be live on the call, and you guys can participate and ask any questions with him as well. Okay, so
I just want to read aloud a couple of the questions.
Sure, go ahead.
One that I got via email is somebody was asking, is the camera only usable with ZoomText 10? And yes, that is definitely true. We did build this in as a new feature in ZoomText 10. So if you can always upgrade to ZoomText 10, you don't have to buy a brand new $600 ZoomText. Upgrades start at $149 for magnifier and $199 for mag reader if you need to get to ZoomText 10. One other thing, I don't know if you mentioned using your own webcam if you already have one.
Yeah, you can use your own webcam. The only thing I will caution you with is if you don't have a good stand set up, it's going to be very difficult. Holding the camera above the printed material that you're looking at is going to be very difficult. It's going to be, jittering and moving all over the place and just very difficult to use. You're welcome to use your own webcam, but I will say that the real value and utility in the use of it is through that camera stand. And it is a custom-made camera stand that attaches to the camera via a threaded tripod mount. You could just buy the stand from us if you already own the Logitech camera that we sell. Most webcams are not going to have a threaded tripod mount. So if you do have one that does, you're welcome to just buy the stand from us as well. Someone asked, I just saw a question that came in about distance viewing. Unfortunately, distance viewing is something that's not going to work very well with the ZoomText camera. It's the same situation as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar where I said you don't want to have the camera position more than 4 to 6 inches away from what you're looking at. If you've got something 10 feet away from you and you have to magnify it 30 times just to get it in view, it's going to be so pixelated that it'll be impossible to read. It'll actually be easier to read with your own eyes than the camera itself. We'd love to offer a distance camera. The only problem is there are not any affordable options at this point. But the technology changing rapidly, we're hopeful that the webcam hardware is going to improve to a point where we can offer an affordable solution.
That question with the iPad?
Yeah, someone asked an interesting question about if they have a USB cable for their iPad, can I use that as my ZoomText camera? Unfortunately not. There's no way to access the live camera view of the iPad on your computer. It can just access what's on the camera roll. Cameras that are compatible with ZoomText camera feature are ones that will work in Skype. For example, if it works in Skype, it's going to work in ZoomText. Those cameras use a mechanism called direct show in order to display the live camera image on screen. I also wanted to clarify, there was that question about, does the camera only work in ZoomText? To use the ZoomText camera feature, yes, you would need a USB webcam. However, it will work in other applications like Skype. But in terms of magnifying and applying the color filtering, those features are only specific to ZoomText 10.
I had a question via email about, if you can view larger things with this. And what's great about the ZoomText camera is because it's so flexible and you can move that arm. I mean, it's over 2 feet long, I believe, the arm. So you can move that. If you're trying to even, let's say you get a giant box in the mail, you can certainly adjust that arm and it can, you can see it on your computer. A lot of people use this for, product boxes that are in their cupboards or something if they want to see, well, what kind of soup is this, what kind of cereal is this. So this really does give you a lot more flexibility over a traditional CCTV where many of them have just a very limited amount of space that you can put something. So yes, you can certainly view objects that are larger than a magazine.
And that's one critical difference between most traditional CCTVs. What you can fit underneath there, you probably don't have more than a foot of space between the table and the actual camera itself on that CCTV. So that's one of the differences. One thing to stress too, a lot of people may think that this is a complete replacement for a traditional desktop CCTV. Now, while this does offer most of those features and really good camera quality and magnification of text, it's never going to approach the magnification and motion clarity of a dedicated CCTV. We're also talking, somewhere 10 to 15 to 20 times the cost for those devices. So this is really a great, affordable, and portable CCTV alternative. Now, I noticed a couple questions about our upcoming product called Image Reader. People are wondering when they'll be able to OCR images. That is something that's still in development. We don't have a release date at this point. I'm hopeful that we will release by the end of the year, but we don't have anything official at this time. Keep in mind that that product is different than the ZoomText camera. ZoomText camera utilizes an off-the-shelf or a consumer webcam to view and magnify printed material. It won't be able to OCR that information just because the quality of the camera lens just isn't good enough. Image Reader will come with a specific document camera that is officially suited for taking pictures of printed material. It's set up in a way that the camera arm will be able to take a picture of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper or an 11 by 14 sheet of paper as well. So that product is a little bit different. It's not going to be able to do the magnification like the ZoomText camera. So that is specifically for OCR. We'll have more information on that in the coming months, hopefully sooner than later.
So we had one question about, we do have dealers, as Derek I think mentioned, all across the world, and the discount that we mentioned, that's only for direct sales through us. It's possible that if you mentioned to your local dealer that, hey, AI Squared is doing this, I want to buy it through you, do you have the same discount? We can't really guarantee to you that they will honor it, just because that's, that's up to them. But it's certainly, if you're used to going through a vendor, it's certainly worth asking about, but it's really for direct purchases. We did have someone else, and I don't know if you've already addressed this, ask about the laptop built-in webcam. Did you answer?
Yeah, I noticed that. I did not.
Okay. So a lot of laptops, even the one that I have right here, it has a webcam built in that's really meant for things like Skype or other video chatting programs. And that's definitely not something that you can use for the ZoomText camera. Think of it, it's pointing out at your face, so you would have to put the piece of paper or whatever you're trying to look at kind of in front of your face as you're trying to view it on screen. So that would be, as you might imagine, quite awkward to try to peek around the thing in front of your face. So unfortunately, that's not meant for the ZoomText camera. But luckily, these webcams are not very expensive, and a lot of people have them already. So that's the answer to that one.
Yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind too. These webcams are very affordable at this point. Like I said, you're welcome to use your own. I would just stress that the camera stand is going to make it much, much easier to use. Now, someone else had a question about using the camera with the dual monitor feature in ZoomText. This is only going to work on one monitor, so there's no way to put the camera view on the other monitor, for example. It's something that we're considering for future versions of ZoomText, but right now the camera view is only going to show up on the primary display. In fact, I don't think you can even run the dual monitor mode in ZoomText while using the camera feature. There's a couple tools that aren't available when you're in the split screen view of the camera. They're very minimal. The only one I can think of is Dock Reader. So if you try and use Dock Reader while you've got the camera in the split screen mode, it won't allow you to launch it. App Reader will still work, but Dock Reader has to have the camera turned off in order to use that tool. Lots of good questions, by the way. So thank you guys for pitching in with all these questions. Another thing, too, I'll just mention while we're waiting for any more questions to come in. If you guys have any follow-ups that you thought about later or just wanted to ask about the webinar, you can always email us. Our email address is learning@aisquared.com, and we can take any questions that you might have about today's webinar or any other webinars in general. Someone just asked about being able to use the camera for web conferencing as well. Yeah, absolutely. In the case of GoToMeeting, I believe you can use the camera for conferencing as well. So, like I said, we have this special support built into ZoomText to allow us to do a lot of great things, magnifying and enhancing the image. But you're free to use that webcam with other applications like Skype, like GoToMeeting. Its utility is not just with ZoomText, but you can use it with other applications as well. Gentleman just asked if anyone's using the camera to do very precise work like soldering circuit boards. This camera, I think it'd be a little bit tricky to do it. The only problem is the camera focal range, I don't think it does a very good job at something that's kind of like a macro zoom, so to speak. Its focal range, I think the furthest or the closest you can get it to something is probably like an inch to an inch and a half away. I don't know of anyone actually using the feature for that. I'm sure it would work, but it might be a little bit difficult. I don't know if the camera has the right focal range for up close like that. But if you purchase it and you find that it doesn't work for you, we do have a 30-day return policy if you find that it just doesn't work out. But I think certainly that would be an interesting use for that for the feature. Definitely, a gentleman just commented that close work would need light. This camera does not have a light source on it, so you may need to introduce another light source on your desk or in your room or whatnot for doing something like the other gentleman mentioned that was very precise and up close work. All right. Any other questions before we end the webinar for today? And like I said, if you think of something afterwards or just didn't get a chance to ask your question, you can always email us, learning@aisquared.com. We'll pick it up there. We will follow up with a recorded version of today's webinar, so just keep an eye out in the next day or two with an email. I'll also list the hotkeys that we went over for the camera feature today, and just remind you guys of the 20% off offer that's good until the end of the week on any camera purchase. All right, well, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, so we're going to go ahead and end the webinar for today. Thank you guys for attending, and thanks for all the great questions today. Hope you enjoyed the webinar, and hope that you also got a lot of good information on the camera feature and how it works and what it looks like. So thanks again, and we hope that you have a great rest of the day.